You're enjoying a Corona. I'm shivering here in the Bitcoin Commons. We're in the Littlefield building, which was built in 1911, pre-Federal Reserve. It's in the middle of Texas. It's usually hot in Texas. Then? It's usually hot in Texas. So they built the building thinking it was going to be hot year-round, but got another winter storm in Austin this week. A lot of trees down.
I'm in the jungle, and you're basically in the Arctic Circle.
Yes. Shout out to my 1031 Carhartt, keeping me warm right now. What a week. A lot of drama out there. A lot of drama.
It's just another fun bear market.
Are we in a bear market, though? We're ripping
after each other in a bear market.
We're by 24K. We're getting close. We're ticking out. We're ticking out.
I feel so.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him already? He's there. You muted yourself. I'm playing with my computer because Rodolfo hit me up. He wants a link to the live stream, so I'll give him that white glove service and send it right to his DMs. And we're there.
Why doesn't he just look it up?
I don't know. He's lazy.
I'm on shitty hotel Wi-Fi, so it is what it is.
All right, you're on shitty hotel Wi-Fi. You're in the jungle. You've got things to do. We're here. An hour and 40 minutes after we were originally supposed to be. The hotel took a while getting Matt's room ready. They had to strengthen the Wi-Fi. Still not as strong as it needs to be, but we'll make this a tight rip. We don't have a very long list, but there are a lot of things going on in the world outside of Bitcoin and within Bitcoin. We'll jump right into Clark's dashboard. The current price of Bitcoin is $23,795 cuck bucks. One cuck buck's going to get you 4,203 sats. Currently sitting at a 458.8 billion cuck buck market cap. We were at block height 774,772. If we waited till the top of the hour, if blocks were coming in at 10 minutes at average, actually it's been about 15 minutes since the last block, we would have announced 774, 774. We're still 2 blocks away from that, though. Speaking of blocks away, we were 1,388 blocks away from the next difficulty adjustment, which is estimated to be negative 5.3% as of right now. Blocks have been coming in at 10 minutes and 32 seconds on average. Would not be surprised if that is due to demand response down here in Texas. Has been cold. Demand for electricity has been increased. And so a lot of miners have been powering down to sell that power back to market, which causes a fall in hash rate. We have had a difficulty adjustment between last week's RHR and right now. That was a upward adjustment of 4.7%. We are currently sitting at a difficulty all-time high of 39.4 trillion hashes. That's the average amount of hashes that are produced before one of the miners finds a hash below the difficulty target at this current point in time. There are currently 13,503 transactions in Clark's mempool. In Samurai, not at an all-time high, but hovering close to it, 6,707.57 Bitcoin. In unspent capacity, that's 159.5 million cuck bucks in unspent value. That might be probably not an all-time high. Or triple the price. And probably more than a third in unspent capacity at the all-time high of last year. But whatever, we're here now. Talking Bitcoin. We've got a
Someone
list.
started construction as soon as we went live, so I had to find a new spot.
What are they constructing?
Like a house or something.
A house.
Some kind of building, some kind of post-fed building.
Is there a beach by the jungle you're at?
Yes.
Nice. I wish I could pop in the ocean right now. I'm here shivering, working hard. Not to say you're not working hard. I like that hat. Shout out to the IBEX team.
This is a work trip.
I need more work trips in the jungle. What do we think? Where should we start? We named this episode.
There's some Bitcoin training going on out here, so
You got to train the Bitcoiners. We're not very well house kept. You got to train them. You got to write down that seed phrase. Secure it. Don't take pictures of it. Don't ever show anybody this.
yeah, that's pretty much.
Stop bitching about ordinals online. There's bigger things to worry about.
No one cares about ordinals except for Twitter.
I know.
Most Bitcoiners have no idea. My cold storage node has no idea because it's pre-Taproot. It doesn't even exist.
We have that on the list. We'll touch on it. I may bitch about it a little bit, but I think it's a nothing burger in the long run. But we named this episode "Nation States are rug nation."
Governments.
The governments are the government rug pulls are accelerating. So we'll start there.
Have escalated.
We went with escalated.
We went back and forth on accelerating versus escalated.
They're escalating, particularly in Lebanon and Nigeria. News out of the last 2 weeks. Lebanon, obviously, they've been going through a central banking crisis, a currency crisis since like late 2019. Back then, the banks essentially pulled a rug pull. They they had a bail-in where they basically closed the banks and took a bunch of their citizens' savings without any due process or fair warning. And so for the last many years, Lebanese citizens have lost faith in their banking system and their currency. What is it in Lebanon? Is it pounds? Lebanese pounds? I believe that's what they are. Yes, Lebanese pounds. And to make matters worse, fast forward to 2023, the government and the central banking apparatus has decided to devalue the pound by 90% overnight. I believe it happened today, actually. And so last week... Yesterday. Last week, $1 would get you 15,007 Lebanese pounds, and now $1 is going to get you 150,000 Lebanese pounds.
But to be clear, like the Lebanese pound was already, I mean, a complete shitcoin losing value. On the black market, this was already essentially its value.
Yes.
The Lebanese government had already shut down all the banks, so people couldn't withdraw. Remember, people were having trouble withdrawing their money. There were limits on it, so they started robbing the banks to like take out money from their own accounts. And then the Lebanese government just straight up shut the banks. And one of the things that's really interesting, and so as a result, the black market rate has gotten substantially worse, and then the official rate was just a complete lie, and now their official rate is kind of coming back more into line, where they say overnight, anything that's in a savings account or whatever that you couldn't access anyway is now all cut by 90%. One of the interesting things in a post-Bitcoin world, and we're seeing this in Nigeria as well, is I saw a bunch of Twitter posts about how in Nigeria, Bitcoin is trading at $47,000, even though Bitcoin in the States is $24,000. Now people say, oh, that's like a crazy arbitrage opportunity. But really what it signifies is that the official rate of the Nigerian currency, the official rate of the Lebanese currency is garbage. And the real rate is the rate you can buy Bitcoin for. So when now that we live in a post-Bitcoin world, any of these economies that actually have decent P2P Bitcoin volumes, the real value of their currency, in my opinion, is its exchange rate with Bitcoin, because that's the hardest, exchange for them to block.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about Lebanon and Nigeria on Monday, and I touched on that quote-unquote premium. It was like $47,000 was the quoted price in Nigeria in these P2P markets, where it's trading at around 24,000 here. So that's a significant premium. And I did hear the argument that, yeah, it's like the actual price of Naira is what you can get Bitcoin for it. But then if you look at the exchanges, though, everything's priced in dollar. I didn't even see any Naira conversions. So yeah,
but it's essentially the Naira. It's the payment methods are in Naira.
Like, so the
It's
P2P,
essentially so like
the P2P markets are
yeah,
pricing off of the government exchange rate
no, the P2P markets are yeah, they're using the government exchange rate,
of Naira to
but
dollars to
it's really
denominate.
based on the black market exchange rate.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Um,
so
and like the thing is like if you were on the streets, there and you were trading dollars for Naira, that would be the rate you would be getting. But if you go to a bank or like a Western Union or something, you're getting the garbage rate. You're getting that official rate, right? But the thing is, those street deals don't have like a nice website that like lists the prices. But with Bitcoin on these P2P exchange platforms, we're able to see like the different offers that are there live. So you have a firsthand look at what the actual value of the currency is. And as Bitcoin adoption increases, that's really, fuck USD exchange rate, fuck what the government says. At the end of the day, your shitcoin is worth how many sats you can get for it. However, like this is not a gameable metric. It's the market is the market. It is what it is. If you have 1 Naira, you can get so many sats, and like that's the rate.
yeah, no, I completely agree. And demand for Bitcoin seems to be high. Let's break this down, starting with Lebanon, like Matt mentioned. The central bank move is essentially a move to bring the white market, the regulated market exchange rate in line with what most Lebanese are trading their pounds into dollars for. So again, that's 150,000 pounds per dollar. That is a significant debasement from 15,007 pounds per dollar. So like 90%, as has been reported. So the pound is a shitcoin. It's essentially worthless. How will this affect average Lebanese citizens? Probably not that much, as they've dollarized rather quickly over the last 3 years. However, this will affect the banking systems, and that's what I wrote in the newsletter. It will certainly affect the Lebanese bank balance sheets, and I think this move is in cooperation with the IMF and sort of the strings that they attached to the most recent loan that they gave the Lebanese government. And in the Reuters piece that we had up, if you read the full piece, they talk about some sort of forgiveness plan over the course of the next 5 years, because they recognize that this devaluation is going to mess up all their balance sheets. And I think they're...
it definitely fucks any Lebanese companies or Lebanese people that have, any kind of savings in pounds in their banking system. Like it's just all got cut. Like people say like Bitcoin's fucking volatile. Like literally a corrupt government cut the value of their savings by 90% overnight.
Yeah. Overnight. Say, done. So yeah, I think the headlines around this and the actual move, the government and the banks were like, this is necessary. We probably won't see any negative externalities from this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this move does wind up fucking something within their system materially. Some unforeseen consequences of a move like this. So that's something to pay attention to, and again highlights the value prop of Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin and its US dollar price may be a bit volatile, but it hasn't had a 90% devaluation overnight dictated by a central authority. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Nobody can change that. Nobody can wake up one day and say, actually, there's going to be 210 million Bitcoin, which is essentially what the Lebanese government just did. Now moving to Nigeria, they are rug pulling their citizens as well, but it's a bit of a different situation there, where the government in Nigeria has vocalized that they want to move to a central bank digital currency system. Whether or not they'll be able to do that is yet to be seen. However, the move that they made, which seems like they're moving in that direction, is they essentially took, I believe, 100 Naira notes, 200 Naira notes, and 500 Naira notes, and said, hey, we're deprecating all these notes. You have to turn them back into the bank. We're going to print new versions of these notes.
The India model.
Yeah, exactly. So they're doing
what
India
did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, with the rupees. So they told all their citizens, hey, all these banknotes are going to be deprecated. February 1st was the original date. They had to extend it by 10 days because people weren't able to exchange their notes in time. And then on top of that, the government said, hey, come exchange your notes. We're going to have new versions of these denominations printed. And it seems like they did not follow through with that promise. They haven't actually printed new notes. So I don't think
they've just use your CBDC wallet and just transfer to that.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't explicitly said that this is a move to remove cash from their system and move toward the CBDC. But if you can sort of piece things together, it seems like a covert move in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin is a money that's independent of governments and corporations. And as a result, it's not under anyone's control. It's a proper free market money that anyone can custody and trade. And it's immune to these types of risks. And as we're going to start to see, I mean, Marty, have you read Mandibles yet? This is just Mandibles, man.
Not yet.
We're going to see more and more of this. We're going to see more bank runs. A freak posted on Twitter today about how his buddy didn't realize that the Fed changed the bank reserve requirement to 0%. Like, we're going to see bank runs. We're going to see currency failures. Like, people are going to start to learn all of this shit the hard way. It's going to be really painful to watch, but I'm just grateful Bitcoin exists.
Who tweeted that out? What was his friend's reaction to that?
I retweeted it. First of all, he was in denial, and then he started to defend it, which is what I've seen as well. I've seen that reaction as well.
All right, let's pull up that tweet.
Meanwhile, we have fucking old rich man Charlie Munger in Wall Street Journal saying that he wants to ban all cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin.
Well, we'll get to that too. I do want to talk about that.
This is not the tweet.
No, this isn't the tweet, but I did want to bring this up just to highlight for anybody watching the stream or watching on YouTube or Bitcoin TV or Spotify once we post this live. I mean, this is the real human cost of these types of moves. So what we're watching now is a bunch of Nigerians outside of an ATM fighting to get access to it so that they can get money out, so that they can operate throughout the economy.
Like, you get to this point, you've already fucking lost, man.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked. But yeah, there's a real.
I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. It's just fear. But yeah,
there's a real human cost to these actions by central planners. Like, I mean, I think that's something that you really have to internalize with how corrupt and backwards the current state of governance is, particularly over monetary policy. You have very select few individuals, in this case, those at the head of the Nigerian government and central bank, making a decision that affects millions of people. I mean, Nigeria is the most densely populated country on the planet with 200 million people on a very small plot of land. And I imagine less than a dozen of those Nigerians made this decision and have negatively affected 200 million people as a result. And the human cost of that. It was
a bunch of corrupt suits.
Yeah. It's all fucked.
Living in their mansions while they fuck over everyone else.
Where's the tweet that you posted?
It's a freak posted. I retweeted it today.
Mason?
Yeah.
My money and banking professor wasn't even his friend.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're friends. Yeah, that's even worse.
My money and banking professor didn't believe me when I told him that the Fed's reserve requirement was quietly removed in 2020. I then showed him the Fed's website and he proceeded to justify it. Not going to make it. The lesson today was to answer the question, what is money? We covered meaning of exchange, unit of account, and store value. Everyone going to act surprised when the bank runs hit. Come on, man. You're trying to incite bank runs?
Everyone's going to act so surprised.
I
would never incite bank runs.
Are you the next Jack Dorsey?
I forgot that Dorsey started hyperinflation with his tweet.
Yeah. But just think about
dude,
that.
It's true, right? Like, that's what's happening. I mean, it's fucking tragic. You see that video you just showed in Nigeria, right? Everyone starts to panic and act surprised and freak the fuck out. And that's where it gets really fucking scary. Like, and it's easy in our little bubble to be like, people see it's coming. Like Matt says, mandibles 15 times every week, but like no one sees it coming.
Not even this
We're
money
just
and
crazy
banking
people.
professor. Go back to the tweet.
Well, those people are just straight Stockholm syndrome, right? Like, they're actually more likely to not see it coming.
I actually remember having a very similar interaction with one of my professors in college when I was studying economics. I did a report on student loan debt delinquency rates in 2012, 2013. I believe it was my senior year, so it was probably that area of time. And I like posted a few charts of the exploding student debt bubble alongside the delinquency rates. And I'll never forget, my professor was like sitting in the first row and like had this gaping, jaw open look, like was squinting and taking notes. Like he was completely unaware of these things going on throughout the economy. But again, I mean, shout out to Mason for posting this tweet at Quace the Quant. I mean, just highlights even those who are supposed to be educators, quote unquote, experts in the domain of monetary economics do not understand fundamental things that we've been talking about here on this show for years. I mean, when the Fed ended their reserve requirements in the spring of 2020, we were on it right away. We were doing emergency.
There was a rabbit hole recap that week.
We were doing stimulus rabbit hole recaps. We were doing 2 week back then, if you don't remember.
The stimulus episodes. How clever of a name.
But yeah, no, like Matt said,
Look
like most people are unwitting to all this stuff. Even the professors who were supposed to be domain experts on these subjects do not know. Mason, you may be wasting your money at that school, sir.
No, he justifies it pretty well underneath or whatever. He's just like, I'm taking this class because it's going to get me my diploma quicker.
Okay. Just you can get your diploma online. You don't even need diplomas anymore.
I mean, mine wasn't very useful.
Neither. I learned a bit of mine, but I have applied it a bit. I am an economist. I like to think that we talk about economics on the show every once in a while.
All you have to do is you start a podcast, and then like 4 years later, everyone considers you an economist. Like, that's how it works. You just have to keep shipping every week.
Every week, consistency is key.
And then you're an economist.
But on a more serious note, like Matt said, like the stuff will sneak up on most people. People are not prepared. Hopefully, you freaks listening to this are a bit ahead of the curve. We assume that you're stacking sats, staying humble, understand the ramifications of all this stuff. We're going to try and educate you about the ramifications, and we're seeing it in real time, particularly in Lebanon and Nigeria. And that's the other thing in the newsletter I wrote, like Western economies may look at that and say that'll never happen here, but that is not the case either. We are not immune to these types of events, and I think a chart that really highlights that is one that Lynn Alden posted earlier this week. And Logan, I'll put this link in the show notes in Slack, but Lynn had a great tweet earlier this week about it's at the bottom of the article about the U.S. Treasury Department and something they actually published, which is projected debt to GDP ratios over the next 100 years or through the end of the century. And if you look at this chart, pull it up, it's pretty insane where we are now. We're at about, was that 2009 or 2020? Yeah, 2020.
I mean, that's just talk about what a bullshit chart.
I mean, they're being honest here.
Who's going to buy it?
They're being honest here. These projections hold. I mean, the U.S. is going to turn into...
But who's going to buy it?
Buy what? The debt?
Yeah.
Nobody. I mean, that's the thing. We're going to try and inflate it away. So,
No, but this is expecting that we're going to buy debt, right? That companies and individuals we're going to own T-bills because we're going to get like 6% interest on them, right? For a yield.
it may be, I mean, that may be like the
You
baseline
see, like
assumption. But
the historical high was when we used to have war bonds because we couldn't do inflation, so people had to actually loan the government money to finance wars.
yeah. So that the historical high was 106% in 1946. In 2021, we hit 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if we go above that. Of course, the debt ceiling debate is raging here in the United States. They'll probably just blow out the ceiling again and let it keep rising.
Logan, pull up the tweet I just sent you. Marty said it out loud, and like this is a meme that I've just heard for so long. This was 5 years ago. I sent out this tweet. It can't happen in my country. Like, fucking check yourself. Like, maybe that tweet was a little bit early, but
Yeah, check
it can
yourself.
and it will.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself, freaks. Bitcoin
Marty,
is.
I watched the new version of All Quiet on the Western Front.
I've seen that. I've heard it's really good. I have not
You
seen the
watched
movie.
the old one, right?
No,
Or did you read the book?
no.
When I was a kid, they made us read it because it was like important to like
It's
wars
like the
bad.
Germans in Russia, right? That's what it's about.
No, it's World War One on the German side of them losing in trench warfare and shit, and like the horribleness of war. I don't know. The reason I bring it up is just because I just feel like we're all so sheltered.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that was really shitty. I mean, that's an understatement. That was fucking horrible.
yeah. Trench warfare doesn't seem.
Really gruesome movie.
Trench warfare doesn't seem like it's something that that I would want to participate in, nor would.
But there was
want
like
anybody
heavy.
else.
There's elements of like heavy government propaganda, right? Like these kids were going to war thinking like they're in 2 weeks they were going to be in Paris. It just like took out the whole generation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, modern day trench warfare. We had 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and here we are. In February 2023, they're still extending these mandates. Another 100 days. Moving on. Next thing on the list we have up here, more pertinent Bitcoin specific news, which is the news out of the great state that I'm in today, Texas, is that Prime Trust officially lost their Texas MTL license. So Swan and Fold users, most notably, are no longer able to buy in the state of Texas. I believe Swan has come out and said they're working to quickly fix this problem, which I imagine would be them getting their own money transmitter license here in Texas.
It's not easy to get one.
It's not easy to get one, but who knows?
They can get one from someone else potentially.
Maybe Strike, because it turned out that you did not have a Roger Ver moment last week on the episode.
What a relief.
You went out on a limb, you put your neck out there, and the bet paid off because I believe right after we stopped recording last week, Strike sent out an email to its users assuring them that they would not be affected by this Prime Trust disturbance because Strike did go through and actually get the Texas MTL. So Strike users unaffected at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about this last week. A lot of these companies like Fold and Swan and Strike have been using Prime Trust licenses. They've been using Prime Trust because you have to get a money transmitter's license, an MTL, in every state, or pretty much every state in America. There's a couple that overlap, but you're looking at 40 plus licenses for each state. And then they also use Prime Trust because Prime Trust will actually handle the custody and the fiat exchange. Strike specifically has been essentially weaning itself off of Prime Trust reliance, getting its own money transmitter licenses, and developing in-house custody. So Texas basically forced their hand, pushing Prime Trust off, and now Strike's doing everything in-house in Texas. So they sent out a letter to everyone, moving custody over. to Strike from Prime Trust. They're using Strike's own MTL. And for the average user, it's business as usual. I mean, obviously, not your keys, not your coins. You should withdraw always, not keep funds on these exchanges or brokers. But yeah, Strike's unaffected here, which is solid to see.
Very
Less
solid to
reliance
see.
on Prime Trust is a good thing.
Have we mentioned that stat that Strike tweeted out towards the end of last year?
What 90% of all Bitcoin on Strike has been withdrawn.
Yeah, that's a pretty good stat.
That's a fantastic stat. Love to see it.
Do you think that's a function of this? Because no, that wouldn't be because they separate like paid Lightning invoices.
But when Strike started, you couldn't even custody with them. You didn't have that option. You could only send to your own self custody wallet. So presumably, a lot of people got set up that way to begin with, and they got in the rhythm of having their own wallet, and then they separately added that buy tab, so you could custody with them. But I think also, like, my guess is the Bitcoin only the Bitcoin only firms in the business, like, they tend to have the Bitcoin only customers. They tend to be like slightly more educated and technically aware. They're probably going to be more likely to self custody. Like, I don't know Swan stats. I don't know River's stats, but my guess is that they're probably all generally higher than someone like a Binance or a Coinbase or Gasp FTX.
FTX isn't even here anymore. They're in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
This is a big thing. I mean, like we mentioned last week, number one, sorry for you freaks who were affected by this MTL rug pull.
Have you talked to people in your hood about that had Swan cut off or Fold cut off? Because, like, I'm just reading press releases.
I've had people DM me. Nobody directly connected to me. Not here in the Commons. I think a lot of people.
So, like, obviously, Cash App and River are not affected either because they both have their own MTLs to begin with.
Yeah, Unchained. If you're buying over their trading desk, they have their own MTLs as well. So they're not affected. Yeah, it's essentially people dependent on Prime Trust. And like we said last week, Texas is the second largest economy in the U.S. So you have to imagine this affects a lot of people, and hopefully, they were able to either set up another exchange account or figure out another way to access Bitcoin if they were dead set.
RoboSats and BISC are unaffected, and so are all the Bitcoin ATMs.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
consider it. But I will say, I said this last week, right? Like, this is not Texas attacking Bitcoin. This is Texas having an issue with Prime Trust. I want that to be absolutely clear.
Yeah, we mentioned it last week as well, but probably bears repeating, is that for those of you who aren't familiar with the way Prime Trust went about getting these MTLs, they're leveraging something called the Nevada Charter, which many of these states seem to have a problem with.
I don't think that's it, though, which I also said last week.
Yeah.
In this particular situation. I don't want to FUD.
But you're going to.
I mean, a certain amount of fear, uncertainty, doubt is always a little bit healthy. And some of that should probably be directed at Prime Trust.
The Bitcoin Bulge wants to know why you're defending Texas LARPing on Liberty.
That's a good point. I just want to make sure that it's very clear that this is a Prime Trust issue.
Yes. Yeah. So be aware, freaks. Sorry to any of you who were affected by this. But it goes to show.
I mean, the whole MTL system in general is fucked. It's just complete garbage and bullshit.
Yeah. Like, takes too long to get.
These services shouldn't need these services. Like, it hurts the consumer. It hurts the consumer at the end of the day, right? It hurts the customer at the end of the day that small firms, it's just burdensome and very difficult for them to get all these individual MTLs, which is why, like, these essentially like clearinghouse backends like Prime Trust have emerged in the first place, right? Is these regulatory moats that get created because of all this burdensome bullshit regulation. And, Texas is part of that as well, right? Like all the states are part of that. It's mostly on the federal level that they all have to do it, but they all have their own little. There's a reason why it's not like a single MTL gets you everyone, right? It's because they all have their own little annoying fucking pieces that you need to get in each individual area, rather than like agreeing on one cuck regulation that everyone shares.
Yeah. I mean, I think this all stems from the interstate commerce laws, which probably stem from the Bank Secrecy Act. Not certain on that, but I'm going to make an educated guess and says it stems from that stupid act.
And a reminder that the Bank Secrecy Act does the opposite of protect your privacy. It's banks should not give you secrecy, which is the most fucked up act ever.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that is one of the hills I'll die on. Is we need to abolish the Bank Secrecy Act. It has done nothing but harm individual consumers.
Marty died on the hill.
I'll die on that hill. I think
on this hill, here lies Marty.
I mean, when you think about it, like, not only has it affected the individual privacy of American citizens, but one big part of the Bank Secrecy Act has to do with limits on how much money you can withdraw from a bank, and they haven't been inflation adjusted since the law was signed into an act in 1970.
They literally never have.
No, never.
Yeah.
If anything, they've brought down the limits. So it's like actually making things even worse.
Yeah, like in 1970, you could buy a yacht for $10,000. Now, like, you can barely buy a fucking car.
You can buy a car, but it's going to be a very shitty one.
That's what I said, barely.
Old. Yeah. Yeah, your government hates you. They don't really respect your right to freedom and sovereignty in the digital age. We do not live in a free country, freaks, if you didn't realize it yet. We've been co-opted by a demonic force.
Marty, the Bank Secrecy Act is not getting repealed until post-hyperinflation.
Agreed.
And at that point, it just won't even matter.
Yeah, none of those laws.
Will just be using Bitcoin.
None of those laws are going to matter. It's all fucked, freaks. It's all fucked. Speaking of fucked, I mean, the government hates you. Can we sidebar here? We're gonna go up to Canada. We're gonna go up to Canada right now.
One of my favorite pieces is Joe Rogers said, "Make sure the first thing you teach your kids is that the government hates them."
It's true.
I always remember that.
I'll never forget the first time my mom explained taxes to me when I was younger. This is not a bullshit story. I vividly remember this.
Did she take away your out? Yeah, hit us.
No, we went to the corner store, still in Northeast Philly. Got a bag of chips. It was 75 cents. It's the only thing we bought. We go to the register, go to checkout. It's 80 cents. I'm like, wait, Mom, it says 75 cents on the bag. Why are we paying 80 cents? She said, the taxes. I wonder taxes. It's like the government takes a cut. And I started crying. I was like, why are they taking money from me? Like, the price is 75 cents. It should be 75 cents. I've always had the hatred for the government in me.
I love the stories where parents take like 50% of your allowance away from you. They like give you the full allowance and then they take half of it back.
That's your tax for living in the house. Really? No, I mean the other is Monopoly. That's
Monopoly's good.
A very direct lesson on the ills of taxes. But no, going back to like government malfeasance and the fact that they hate you, we're going to pan up to our brothers up north in Canada. I'm sure some of you have seen this video, but it's a video of a dairy farmer. You don't have to play it. I mean, you can play it on silent if you want to. Like skip to...
Yeah, don't put the sound on. Let's just talk over it.
Skip to the end. But I mean, this is just an example of the insanity of central governments. And Canada, it appears that they have milk quotas, and once you hit your quota, you can't produce any more milk, but cows need to be milked. They need to relieve themselves, and dairy farmers do that, and then what winds up happening, they just dump the milk and waste it. And it's particularly weird in Canada because Canadians are paying 7 Canuck bucks per liter for milk, and it's obvious that they have an abundance of oversupply of milk that could drive that price down for Canadians who are probably suffering from the ills of inflation over the last 3 years particularly. But no, the government has quotas. Once you hit them, you got to start dumping your milk. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we have similar bullshit in America as well. It's basically like it's a subsidy for producers, right? To keep prices up. So that's the idea, or at least that's the concept.
Maybe the idea, but that what we just saw was
I mean, it's fucked.
a
It's
producer.
100% fucked. But it's like what I like found out that we have like the National Cheese Reserve. Do you know that we have like that we stockpile cheese in America, and then that's what paid for the Got Milk advertisements when we were kids?
Was not aware of that.
Because they couldn't store milk. They wanted to essentially juice the profits of producers, and they couldn't store milk, so they turned it into cheese, and they stored the cheese instead. But then they couldn't get rid of it, so they started the Got Milk campaign to try and get people to eat more dairy so that they could actually sell the cheese from the reserve.
Well, I'm happy to report I don't have osteoporosis thanks to the Got Milk campaign.
Go out and DuckDuckGo the U.S. government National Cheese Reserve. That's a fucking rabbit.
Why is the price?
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. While we're on the food and farming in the U.S., I mean, this is another story, which is weird. The eggs, the chickens haven't been laying eggs this winter. Have you heard this one?
I have chickens that are laying eggs.
Well, what are you feeding them?
I'm eating the eggs. The eggs are coming out of the chickens. I don't know how it works. It just comes right out of their butt.
I don't think it comes out
Probably
of their butt.
not how it works.
I don't think they.
I mean, I have a buddy. I have a buddy who lives a couple blocks away from me who supplies us with a copious amount of eggs.
That's a good connection to have. Well, my egg connection here in Texas, his chicken stopped laying, and I don't know if you freaks are aware of this, but apparently, back in the fall of last year, one of the major suppliers of chicken feed, Total Supplies, changed the ingredients of their feed, and as a result, it made the chickens unable to lay eggs. And if you want to put your tinfoil hat, join Marty Jones in the corner over here. Total Supply has very deep connections with the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, and before he quote unquote killed himself, Jeffrey Epstein.
Didn't they just destroy their business?
Now that people found out that their changing of the feed is what is causing the eggs not to be produced, yes, they may have destroyed their business, but maybe they thought they could get away with it. What we have here, it's a 2-minute and 45-second video. We're not going to play the whole thing, or we won't play any of it, but we'll link to it in the show notes. This is a chicken farmer who basically described the problem with the feed, and her chickens didn't lay any eggs this winter, which is extremely abnormal. And as soon as she...
they lay a lot of eggs. Like, I've been going down the chicken rabbit hole. Did you know, like, a single chicken they just fucking produce eggs, man?
Yeah, well, not if you're giving them Total Supply feed. They stop producing eggs.
Well, freaks, not your chickens, not your eggs. Or, I mean, at least have them be a neighbor's chicken. I don't own chickens yet.
Not your feed.
You know what else I found out, Marty, about eggs? Were you aware of this? That eggs naturally, you don't need to refrigerate them because they're covered in this, like, they're encapsulated
film,
when they come out of the chicken.
Yes.
So you can just leave them unrefrigerated, but the U.S. government forces you to wash the eggs. So then we have to use energy, which is boiling the oceans, to refrigerate our eggs. And then meanwhile, they're mad at Bitcoin mining. I never knew that. There's magical chicken eggs that you can just not refrigerate.
Well, not magical. Similar to raw milk. They're just eggs.
Magical, Marty.
They're just eggs.
They're magical.
You
don't have to refrigerate them. And when they come out naturally, you just don't have to refrigerate them. My buddy just brings over the eggs, and I can just leave them on the fucking counter.
Yeah, this is the raw milk discussion apply
I
to
hate
another.
the term raw milk. It's just milk and then government pasteurized milk.
Yes. Then you have eggs, and then government forced to be refrigerated eggs.
You have eggs, and then you have boiling oceans eggs that you have to like leave in the fridge.
We need to lean into this. The government is forcing you to refrigerate your eggs. It's disgusting. It needs to be stopped. And so does Total Supply. They're poisoning your chickens. If you're feeding your chickens Total Supply grain, stop doing that. Back to the woman that we just had up there. Her solution was opening the coop and letting the chickens free range, and they started laying eggs again within a week.
There you go.
And that's the thing. Did you see the largest egg processor in the country went up in flames last week? And
that
apparently,
was pretty suspicious.
I've been digging into this too. I mean, the big meme that the government's been running with about the eggs is the avian flu. And I've been diving down the chicken farmer rabbit hole pretty aggressively last week, and they're saying that's all bullshit. They have culled millions of birds, but they're saying it's bunk PCR tests that have been throwing off false positives for the avian flu.
Oh, yeah, the PCR tests don't work.
We are under attack, freaks. Your government hates you. They hate you. They're trying to kill you. They're trying to take away good food from you. There's also a report that came out and said eggs can cure COVID. Maybe that's why they're doing this as well. Who knows?
Look, I mean, none of this matters. Just get your own chickens and just make your own eggs. If you don't have, like, they just literally produce eggs. It's amazing. It's quite, talk about a SATSLO positive animal. They just like produce fucking eggs.
Free range your chickens.
I will have chickens before Marty has chickens. I promise you that. There will be annoying chickens in the background of my audio feed before Marty's feed.
Well, I'm gonna go buy chickens before you even get back from the jungle.
The race is on. The race is on.
Matt's gonna take a picture of him holding a chicken on his flight back home.
Yo, I can ship you eggs from Tennessee to Texas because they don't need refrigeration.
Don't need that
as long as it's not.
Don't need that though.
But I'm saying I could because you wouldn't need to refrigerate them.
Yeah.
You don't even need to use like dry ice or anything. You would probably need to use a lot of package material because they break.
Yeah, they're very fragile. You won't want to ship those eggs.
You guys are going
just
to
use a lot of bubble
get your
wrap.
chickens, and you're going to find out that the eggs do come out of the chicken's butt because they have one hole for everything.
Oh, they do come out of the butt. Matt was right.
There you go. So did Logan beat us both and he already has chickens?
So are eggs technically poop?
Logan, do you have any chickens?
Not at the moment.
Well, Logan, I appreciate you coming in via God mode on that.
God is Jevy in the comments. God has spoken. One hole.
Debbie also said there's milk and there's white cloudy water. I like that framing.
Yes. Stop buying chicken feed at Total Supply. Co-founder at Standard Bitcoin, also Farmer Tom. He's got chickens. He lives up. I'm not going to dox where he lives.
They're laying eggs.
They're laying eggs because he goes. He had the sense, the spidey sense, to avoid Total Supply, and he goes to like the Appalachian supplier of all this stuff, the hillbillies, and they provide the good feed.
Just to be clear, my egg supplier right now is P, formerly Bitcoin Magazine, now Swan Bitcoin. He deserves all the credit for feeding my family with eggs.
Well,
so thank you, P.
P, thank you for the eggs. Thank you for the butt nuggets, as Bitcoin and Clyde is calling them. One hole. Didn't know that. Thank God the voice of God stepped in and educated us on this. Back to serious talking points, though. That is pretty serious. We should know about the chicken problems here. Obviously, we mentioned
Mandibles.
We mentioned it earlier in the episode. A lot of controversy on Twitter about ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin.
Well, there's less controversy about ordinals. Most of the controversy is about inscriptions.
Yes. So I've been talking a lot. You take this away. What is the controversy?
Because no one really knows what's going on. Inscriptions is essentially this idea of transcribing data into the Bitcoin blockchain, the ledger that gets transmitted between all the nodes. Arbitrary data, you can transcribe into there, and inscriptions uses Taproot. My basic understanding here uses Taproot to make it cheaper. Previously, it was possible, but now it's cheaper to do it with Taproot. They pay a fee, and the thing that they've been doing is text-based image files, essentially. So the image file is hosted on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you use a decoder to turn that text into the original image file. But instead of like so obviously where people first go to it is NFTs, because for some reason people love NFTs. But instead of something like Ethereum, where Ethereum is essentially a hash to the link of a picture that's somewhere else, in this case, the text that's on the chain is the image.
Text code.
It's not like hosted somewhere else.
Text code that could be like decrypted, and
you put it through a decoder. You just like put it through an app, and then it shows the image.
Yeah. So this was
But
enabled.
it's hosted on the chain itself.
Yes, this was enabled by SegWit, I believe. It allowed you to put this type of data in witness data, and that
it was because the witness data didn't exist pre-SegWit. Like you could do it before SegWit happened, and then SegWit essentially was a de facto block size increase on the witness side. This extra data that's in each block, and then so SegWit you could put it there, and then Taproot made it even cheaper to put it there, right?
Yes, so people are more incentivized to do this stuff. People are saying NFTs are coming to Bitcoin. This is incredible. It's going to drive demand for block space. Yada yada yada. I think it's a passing fad that'll fizzle out in time. I did hop on Twitter last night. Luxor is a mining pool. They were celebrating the fact that they mined a block with the biggest block of all time. I believe it was 3.99, almost 4 megs. I believe it was right under it. But they had this magic internet money, a play on that meme that Udi produced apparently, and they did. So they mined a block with that ordinal included, and I got into the mix because that's what worries me, is that like this type of stuff could expand the attack surface of Bitcoin and create some perverse incentives. I called Luxor out because they were gloating about this and like waving the block around. Look, we mined this block with this ordinal in it. And then I looked at the reward data, and they'd only collected 900,000 sats in fees on that block when the average during that period was above 10 million. So I basically said, hey, if I was a miner in Luxor, I'd be pretty pissed that you mined this block to make a point about ordinals. Apparently, though, Nick and Ethan made it clear that they included the ordinal with an or when they mined the block, they accepted an out-of-band payment to get that image into the block, that transaction with the image in the block. So they did get more revenue for that block, but it was out of band. Then I have questions like Luxor's hasn't advertised out of band payments and all that shit.
So first of all, no one uses Luxor. They have like less than 1% of hash. Second of all, their miners are paid on FP. They're definitely not a major mining pool.
They're the 7th largest pool. That's pretty major. They're top 10.
What is their total hash rate?
They're at 6.7 exahash. They're bigger than Brains pool right now.
Really? I looked them up the other day, and it looked way. Mempool.space was saying they were way less than that. I said it was less than 1%.
They are 6.7 overall. Yeah, they're less than 1%. 0.69.
Yeah,
that's weird.
They're like nothing. But,
on insights.brains.com.
So the way their payout schedule works for their individual miners that use them is FPPS. So essentially, they take an average of the 144 previous blocks, what those earned, and that's what they pay them out on. And then the third thing is, so in this situation, they got probably paid about the same, the individual miners. But the real question is, and we haven't seen this because blocks, the fee market that we all kept saying was going to come, right? We kept saying there's going to be a sustained high fee market, right? And a sustained high fee market is a situation where mempools never clear. And when mempools never clear, you start to see people paying higher and higher fees, and you start to see fees become a larger portion of the block reward, right? Right now you have the subsidy plus fees. the overwhelming majority of the reward is the subsidy, not fees. But as blocks start to fill up, as mempools start to fill up, the percentage for fees should be higher. At that point, when that happens, we're going to see way more out-of-band payments for miners. And we already kind of saw it in 2017. We kind of saw it in the fee spikes that happened since then. They have these things called transaction fee accelerators. Like I remember in 2017, like you would submit a transaction, you'd be like, I paid too low of a fee, and then you'd pay the pool out of band. And a lot of times you wouldn't even pay them with Bitcoin because mempools were clogged. So people would pay with like credit cards and stuff, and the mining pool would take that fee. Now, that starts to come into question with how mining pools should have their revenue distribution set up in the first place. Like, does FPPS make sense in that situation if all of a sudden a lot of miners are taking out of band payments? This is completely like the JPEGs on Bitcoin is hastening this conversation right now. Like, this is why we're having this conversation about Luxor doing this. But really, it's a greater conversation about out-of-bound payments for just regular Bitcoin transactions. And it becomes even more of a situation with Stratum V2, because if Stratum V2, if we have that block construction part of Stratum V2 where the individual miners are constructing the blocks and choosing which transactions come in, we're going to have to be doing calculations on the miner pool side of did they take not the most profitable version of the transaction set when they did it, because maybe that individual miner, maybe Joe Schmo, who has whatever amount of hash and is connected to Slushpool, is taking a separate out-of-band payment that he's not even telling Slushpool about, and he's including a transaction in there. And that is why mempool.space has like the ideal block construction versus what happened, so that there's actual math there. You know, you can actually check and see, did the miner use, you know, do the most profitable block construction for this? And then you can essentially take the subtraction there and try and rectify it for the rest of the miners, like make it fair for the rest of the miners that are part of a pool. And this is if we can go back to the RBF discussion where we were talking about default RBF versus non-default RBF, because if you don't have RBF, then all of a sudden we're not seeing this free market happen in actual mempool gossip. We're seeing what would happen is people are sending transactions, the fee is too low, and then they're sending an out-of-band payment completely separate, and then you have to try and account for that out-of-band payment when you're paying out miners.
Yeah. A couple things here with Stratum V2. I know you mentioned the possibility of individual miners constructing blocks, taking out-of-band payment, and not giving the full reward to the rest of the pool, which is what they arguably should do. And you mentioned mempool.space has the expected block revenue versus the actual. So you can use that as a sort of an amending service to make sure that the miners are acting in good faith. But I also do think that in Stratum V2 there are some penalties for miners that fail to actually produce blocks that are close or within a certain standard deviation of the expected block revenue.
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they essentially use that. That's how you have to keep them honest, right? And like we've seen. This was a little bit different because it was a single transaction. That was this JPEG that was 4 megs, right? So it was like the whole block was this transaction essentially. But we've seen, like, remember when Wang Chun with F2 Pool, he donated to Luke, and he paid no fee for that, right?
Yeah,
now really
mine his transaction in the block that is
really he was stealing opportunity cost from the rest of the miners in the pool. Now, the free market fee for that was probably like 5 cents or 6 cents. No one gave a shit, right?
But at scale, that's full blocks.
Yeah, that's what you start to see. Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's what, I mean, maybe I was a bit aggressive on Twitter last night with the Luxor guys. I want to make it clear. I like the Luxor guys a lot. I've had Nick and Ethan on the show on TFTC before, but I do think it's important to really highlight that. Again, going back to the fact that, like, number one, I mean, I thought originally that they had simply mined a block with suboptimal fees because they don't advertise that they do out-of-band payments. So it was number one, it was news to me that they do out-of-band payments. And then number two, as a miner, again, trying to hold everybody accountable here, like how do you account for that? Like if you do a one-off out-of-band payment, like how's that auditable? Like, how are you expressing that to your clients?
This is why we need RBF. This is why RBF is so important, because then it's actually in the mempool gossip. It's not completely out of band. No matter how you set it up, will always require some level of trust, because it's by design. It's out of band.
Well, what if you did the out of band over the Lightning Network and you essentially, but as the pool, you basically put up the paid invoice receipt as proof? Is that not enough? Is that suboptimal?
But what is it the pool doesn't do it? That's where the trust comes in.
Well,
they just don't disclose they received the money.
Yeah. So
you're trusting them to disclose it. They can prove that they received the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then they can distribute it. But you can never prove, except by logic, that, this doesn't make any sense. Why would someone mine this for no fees?
Yeah, because hypothetically,
in a high fee environment.
Hypothetically, they could send out 2 invoices for the out of band payment, show the pool 1, and then keep the full other invoice.
You would never know. Yeah. Or they could pay them in fucking a duffel bag full of cash, right?
Yeah.
You just never know. Or just a completely separate Bitcoin payment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a credit card payment or whatever. You just can't tell. But they can prove that they received something. You have to trust them that they received. You have to trust them to actually disclose what they receive.
Yeah.
And that is the issue with out-of-band payments, but they're here. We've seen them for years. And I think it's important to realize that this is a distinct difference
from the
There's
ordinal
two conversations,
conversation.
right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a conversation of transcribing arbitrary data into Bitcoin that's not Bitcoin transactions, not like actual Bitcoin payments. And then there's a conversation of mining pool dynamics and how they're set up and the trust relationship between them and miners and out-of-band payments. And those are 2 different conversations. They kind of came together. And actually, there could have been a third conversation that would have come together if Barack hadn't broken LND twice already, because these JPEGs would have broken LND. And that would have been an interesting narrative shift, because he essentially did the same thing on Taproot when he did like his, 999 of 999 multisig. It was the same vulnerability that would have triggered LND. So if he hadn't broken LND first,
this would have,
the inscriptions would have. Yeah, and then that would have been a whole different story. Like the narrative around it would have been completely different.
Well, it did break a few Explorers. I know BTC Pay servers, Explorer on previous versions.
Only the old version
was borked, and then similarly with Zeus as well. So it did mess up those older Explorer versions. And then back to separating the out-of-band payments from ordinals, focusing ordinals specifically. Like I said earlier, I think it's a passing fad. I think Bitcoin is supposed to be a dumb money protocol. I think trying to force these NFT use cases on chain is stupid, amateur. This personal preference, obviously many others disagree. I think it's expanding the attack surface in ways we may not be fully sure of, but again, in the long run, I do think demand for block space is going to be extremely high, particularly for peer-to-peer transactions, and due to the amount of data that these inscriptions take up, I think at a certain point in the future, the total amount of fees will be larger for pure transactions than a block full of pure transactions than one. Or now we're getting semantics. What is a transaction?
The reason it's cheap enough to send all this bullshit is because we don't have a lot of people using on-chain right now, right? It's just as on-chain usage goes up, the fee market will develop and it will get more expensive to do them. And that's the whole mechanism that's supposed to stop quote unquote spam, right? The whole mechanism in Bitcoin to stop an ever bloated chain is that fees rise the more you use the chain. And then people will be more price sensitive about what they actually store in the chain and what they don't. I think there's some you got to think, first of all, you got to think on a practical level, right? The practical level is okay, maybe you don't like them. How do you stop it? Are you going to hard fork out Taproot? Are you going to try and do that? And so I just put in Slack, I put in Polstra's response to this about how they were thinking about it before it got released, because they knew that arbitrary data could be used in this way, but it was a fee paying transaction. And basically what their conclusion was it is too complicated to try and do anything more than rely on the fee market here. And ultimately, the fee market itself will be a burden, and will price out this kind of situation, right? It won't bloat the chain. And our caps, the way we have it set up, the 4 meg cap, essentially the 4 meg cap post SegWit on blocks is supposed to be the upper end limit. We've come to the conclusion, or the community by consensus has essentially come to this conclusion, that if we go full blocks from here on out, the burden on nodes won't be too great, that people will still be able to use their own node, run their own node. It'll be accessible. It'll be cheap. That was the conclusion we came to. And we've been saying this whole time, like, blocks will be full. They haven't been full because everyone's using custodial lightning and fucking exchanges and shit. They haven't been full this whole time. And so, like, if monkey JPEGs are what fill up the chain, it's like hard for me to be too angry about it. But I would say another conclusion, which is weird to me, and no one's talking about this, is that we go on and on about, and we talked about, we checked the tapes. I think we talked about it pre-Taproot. But this whole, like, and I don't mean to gaslight people about like soft forks versus hard forks or whatever, but like the whole point of soft forks, or like the thing that's the narrative that's sold to the people on soft forks is like, you're the man in the coma, like you don't have to deal with it, right? Like, you're the man in the coma, like your node still works, like yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, so then why is everyone so fucking mad? Like, why are you even using a post Taproot node? And the real answer is because there's a social pressure attached to it. It's okay, maybe if you're in a coma, your node still fucking works. But if you don't update your node, you're going to be missing a shit ton of activity that's happening on the Bitcoin blockchain. And you're like essentially forced to upgrade. And then if you don't like it, you have to hard fork it out after the fact. So then that's like, to me, like that's the real question here. The real question is how do we treat soft forks in Bitcoin? And why are soft forks, like they're not treated with enough reverence. Like the Taproot soft fork was not treated with enough reverence of what it really was, because ultimately everyone's pulled along with it. Like, it's not like I can just opt out. I mean, I say all the time, like, one of my nodes is not updated, right? Yeah, oh great. Like you can't use it with Lightning clients. I have no idea what any kind of activity is going on in the network that's on the Taproot side.
No, great. I think another way to put that is what I've been thinking in recent days is, like, are these upgrades even worth it? Like, again, because this is a complex system, and when you change it, like we have with SegWit, now Taproot, like it just opens up again the door for like new attack surfaces. And I mean, hand up. I'm sure you'll put your hand up too. We were pushing for SegWit. I remember I was running BIP 148 and pushed for Taproot.
I mean, SegWit I loved.
Wrote a lot about Taproot.
I think the whole point of Taproot was to add shitcoins to Bitcoin, but just Lightning Labs thought they were going to get to rent seek it, and instead Ordinals came along.
There's just some fighting words.
There's a hot take.
I mean, it has me.
What's going to happen to Taro now? Did Ordinals replace Taro?
I don't know. I don't know. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, is there a case to be made for ossification? I mean, I had James O'Byrne on the show a couple weeks ago. I asked him, like, what do you think about ossification? He's like, there's no chance. Like, we need to update this code on an ongoing basis. But again, I don't know. Maybe, like, how many updates is enough? What is good enough? Should we confine the design space for Bitcoin to such a point where you just have, again, this dumb money protocol, as dumb as possible, and then you build up on it in layers just to ensure that we don't have any gotchas in the future?
I think when most people talk about ossification, they really mean like just maintenance releases, right? Like there's small maintenance releases. It's just not big changes. Like, Marty, can you narrate Andrew Polster? Can you be Andrew's voice and just read this for the freaks?
I will not try to imitate his voice, but I will read. Okay, here we go. Let me pull this over. Unfortunately, as near as I can tell, there is no sensible way to prevent people from storing arbitrary data and witnesses without incentivizing even worse behavior and or breaking legitimate use cases. If we ban quote-unquote useless data, then it would be easy for would-be data storers to instead embed their data inside quote-unquote useful data, such as dummy signatures or public keys. Doing so would incur and around 2x cost to them. But if 2x is enough to disincentivize storage, then there's no need to have this discussion because they will be forced to stop due to fee market competition anyway. And if not, it means that there's little demand for Bitcoin block space. So what's the problem with paying miners to fill it with data that validators don't even need to perform real computation on? But if we were to ban quote unquote useful data, for example, saying that a witness can't have more than 20 signatures in it, then we are into the same problem we had pre-Taproot. That is effectively impossible construct signing policies in a general and composable way, because any software that does so will need to account for multiple independent limits. We deliberately replace such limits with quote unquote, you need to pay 50 weight for each signature to make this sort of analysis tractable. There's a reasonable argument that this sort of data is toxic to the network, since even though quote unquote the market is willing to bear the price of scarce block space, if people were storing NFTs and other crap on chain, then the Bitcoin fee market would become entangled with random pump and dump markets, undermining legitimate use cases and potentially preventing new technology like Lightning Network from gaining a strong foothold. But from a technical point of view, I don't see any principled way to stop this. Andrew Polstra. Yeah, and we get into the whole semantic argument of what is a valid transaction, what is spam.
Yeah.
Is that subjective? Is there any objective definition of this? And again, I think
I stand with Andrew.
I mean, yeah, I think people are going to be able to do this. I mean, we have to live with the state of the chain now. There's nothing we can do about it. If it can be done, it will be done. I mean, Barack did what he did in the fall of last year. Now people with ordinals are doing it. But again, I think it should drive forward the conversation of, should we make it even harder to change Bitcoin? Because you have these somewhat unforeseen events happening that many didn't expect.
But I don't even think this was unforeseen. Like, I think Polstra and the Wizards, like, they knew, of course, this was going to be the thing. Like, the way he explains it there, he's like, yeah, like, we were, like, looking at that, like, that was the case. It just wasn't what the propaganda machine went out to the network and told them, you know, we need Taproot.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were, it seems like they were aware of this situation and rightfully thought it was worth the risks. And I think it was, I still think Taproot is a good upgrade. Like, Taproot is an upgrade that basically facilitates all these other kind of soft upgrades that we can have in the future. It makes it easier in the future to have, you know, more functionality. But it's just interesting, like, the Twitter outrage is interesting. Like the yeah, I don't know. It's
yeah. I want to make it clear.
Really give two shits.
I want to make it clear for anybody that caught my Twitter spat with the Luxor guys last night that I'm not really, I'm not saying like ordinals are spam. If it's a valid transaction, it's technically within consensus rules.
And we can prune
it's
it.
not spam, and you can prune it. My spat with the Luxor guys was about like the out of band payment, and then, yeah, again, over time, block space is scarce. I think demand for Bitcoin as a monetary asset, as a store of value, as a medium of exchange is going to increase significantly, and the demand to get peer-to-peer transactions without ordinal inscription data included is going to outgrow the demand to put inscriptions into transactions. And a miner is more likely to mine a block with a bunch of smaller transactions with cumulative higher fees than one large transaction with a sum of fees that is less than what they could mine with a bunch of smaller transactions.
So did you see what I posted about the Ghost Gun SPL files?
Yes.
So someone posted that on Stacker News, like using inscriptions to host essentially the CAD files to the 3D printed parts for 3D printed guns. And I think that's an interesting thought process, right? Because if those get sent, they're heavily censored files to begin with. Like, a lot of people access them via torrents and other censorship resistant means. But I think that's a situation where you might see arbitrary data that is worth a fee. Right? It's like essentially, I mean, that has been the whole thesis. That is the thesis we've been talking about this whole fucking time, right? Which is that the only things that will go on chain are the things that are worth paying the sats to go on chain, right? And there might be certain things that arbitrary data like that is worth putting on chain. I don't know if that's STLs. I don't know if that's some special bullshit NFT or something like, but there will be certain things that are worth putting on chain, and those things will get put on chain, and they will pay the fee to get put on chain.
Yeah. It's going to happen. If it's within consensus rules, it gets included in a block, it's valid. I mean, I don't think we can call it spam. You just have to, if you don't like the stuff, you just, I don't want to say you have to hope, but a future in which you're made happy is a future in which the transactions,
run a free Taproot node.
The transactions that you deem to be worthy outgrow the ones that you deem to be unworthy. But this is the way these distributed consensus networks work, and something we have to live with.
Does it makes you think different about soft forks, right?
Yes, it definitely does. I have been questioning
this whole idea that like soft forks are opt-in is like just bullshit. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm becoming more of a let's move slower and maybe make less drastic changes in the future.
Now, if you want, so we've been talking about inscriptions. I have my own issues with ordinals, but I don't really understand them well enough. But I can tell you
ordinals
that
and
Casey
inscriptions
said
are
to me-
different. There's an ordinal in each block that has to do with some sort of derivation from the block number and the sats
look,
produced.
all of this conversation is extremely frustrating to me because I'm not really concerned about censorship for non-fungible tokens. I'm pretty concerned about censorship for fungible tokens. And I want Bitcoin to be as fungible as possible. I think collaborative transactions like Bitcoin collaborative transactions like CoinJoin enhance Bitcoin's fungibility. I think that's where we're going to start to see the true censorship test. But ordinals on the surface is like is in direct opposition of fungibility, right?
Yeah.
Is this idea that sats are different, that each sat is different rather than equivalent and fungible with each other. Now, I haven't dove deep on ordinals. Casey's going to be at the park this week to talk about ordinals. He's like tried to talk to me about it in the past. It just kind of goes in one ear out the other, and I guess that's on me, and maybe I should learn more about them. But on the surface, the idea that one sat is worth different than another sat is fundamentally against my worldview.
Agreed. I feel that way as well. Again, I'd prefer Bitcoin to simply be a dumb money protocol. Things like this erode those properties of fungibility, which I think is important for a dumb money protocol.
Yeah, I think at the core, I like the idea of a protocol that is purely money, and I think it simplifies all the incentives. Now, that's why I pulled up Andrew Polster and had you narrate him, because I just don't know if that's possible. Just doesn't seem like that's possible. So, I would like to have a unicorn as well that lays eggs that aren't paid, that aren't, regulated eggs, but I'm not going to have unicorns. So
does it all come out one whole with unicorns as well?
No idea. I've never met one.
Neither have I. I wanted to give, I know I was engaged in a back and forth with the Luxor guys last night. They did drop a product this week that I think is very noteworthy of bringing up. I put it in the show notes or the Slack Logan. They launched an ASIC exchange. So request for quote.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So shout out to the Luxor team for launching this. The market for secondary ASICs has been notoriously opaque, very disconnected, different secondary market actors and bidding systems. And Luxor recognized that problem and decided to launch this request for quote product, which is sort of a platform where you can, if you're selling ASICs, put them up for sale, have like a bidding process in one centralized location. Something like this has been needed. So Luxor launched it.
Yeah, this is awesome. It is very opaque, currently the secondary market. So it's good to see like a real marketplace, and maybe we can start to figure out what the actual prices are for some of these ASICs secondhand. Because it's really difficult right now. I just want to say one more thing about the inscriptions ordinals thing. I will say that right now I'm absolutely loving the organic growth of Noster and just watching it kind of just be born in an adversarial environment.
It's incredible.
And I will say a hat tip. And so separately, obviously, that's completely different than ordinals and inscriptions. But separately to Casey and everyone else that's like working on ordinals and inscriptions, there's something to be said about that they just fucking built this shit. You know, there's no company or anything there. They just hacked away, all open source, and like they put monkey JPEGs on the Bitcoin blockchain. And like now all these shitcoiners are super excited because it's like better than Ethereum NFTs and shit. And they just kind of fucking did it. They there was no forks to Bitcoin. There was no jostling for politics or like we need these changes to Bitcoin or these changes. They just organically just fucking made it happen. And like that is always really interesting to me. It's just when people just build without permission. Just build without permission, tell everyone to go fuck themselves. That's always admirable.
Agreed. It's the beauty of a permissionless system, if you will. Again, we can bitch. I may have my personal preferences, but what is. And people have the ability to do this stuff, and you can cry about it all you want, but to think that things will be possible, people won't do them because you think they shouldn't be done is a bit naive and probably is not going to happen. What do we have next? Strike. Back to Strike. They launched their Clover point of sale system. I thought we talked about this last week, or they drop it after we recorded.
I don't think we did, but
Did we talk about this?
Maybe we did, and
This is the same tweet from last week.
Same tweet from last week, but
okay. Scratch that. Sorry, guys.
Still staying on Strike, though. They did announce something this week that we didn't touch on last week because it hadn't happened yet, which is the expansion of their remittance services to the Philippines in cooperation with Pouch.
Yeah, so this is similar to what they did with BitNob with Africa, with what was it, Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya. So now people in the Philippines, you can send money back to them from the United States. They do not have to have a Pouch account. They do not have to have a Lightning wallet. They do not have to have a Strike account. All you need is their bank account or their phone number that's linked to mobile money, and you send them money, and then they receive it as their local currency directly into either their mobile money account or their bank account. Currently, most of them are using Western Union. They're getting charged, very high fees to send it. I think he said in his post like 7% or something like that. So Bitcoin undercuts it. Over $1 billion gets sent every month from the U.S. to the Philippines. Like, this is a big deal. This is what people actually find helpful to live their lives and to survive. Like, millions of people are sending money, every month to the Philippines so their family in the Philippines can survive and feed their families. So it's pretty cool to see Bitcoin help there.
Yeah, this will be massive, not just for individuals. Obviously, it's incredible that family members living abroad in the U.S. can now send their family members in the Philippines money instantly at lower fees than they would pay otherwise with other services. But this will probably also be big for businesses as well, because I know there's a lot of individuals who leverage Filipino developers to do a lot of work, and this will make it easier for them to pay those as well. Is there something funny in the comments? What are you laughing? Are you laughing at me or the comments?
No, they're laughing at they say my buttons on my shirt keep going down as the episode goes.
Just take it off. Just take it off.
No, you've done that in the past, though, I believe.
I have.
Remember that episode.
I have done that. Let's get to shout-outs. Shout-outs and boostagrams before we get to software updates, because that's what's next up on the list. Go to shout-outs first. Let me pull up BTC Pay Server. Item. Code shout out. All right, today's the second. We have 2 shout outs. First one, dear Matt and Marty, thanks so much for essentially rescuing me from the depressing world of 401ks, IRAs, and shitcoinery. Ever since graduating with a degree in economics, I thought the whole system made no sense and I was alone and crazy. I'm taking software development courses now because I've never been so interested in something, which I give you both a lot of credit for. The signal you've provided has changed me as a person and made me feel more optimistic about the future. Together we will all thrive. I've never felt so liberated when using burner phones and laptops, Sparrow and Cold Card, and even just ordered a node. To any of you freaks who listen to Matt and Marty's advice and haven't acted yet, just do it. Take the next step in your Bitcoin setup and feel yourself become more sovereign while supported by the diverse group of freaks around the world. Keep up the amazing, life-changing work, Matt and Marty. Come rocket soundboard, please. I don't know if we have the soundboard set up, but
I do not have the soundboard with me, but
I'll just give you one. Come rocket. Sounds like the soundboard, I think. Shout out to you, Freak. Anonymous
there
Freak.
we go.
Very...
The soundboard is literally you, Marty, so it should sound like it.
Come rocket.
Appreciate you, Freak.
Very kind words, and it's always amazes me that you guys get so much value out of the show, and thank you for giving it back. It's notes like this, shout outs like this that bring extreme joy to my life, and I'm just very, very happy to learn that some of you guys are getting some value out of this and making changes in your life. Shout out to you. Second, last shout out before we get to boostagrams. It's been a pleasure listening to the show over the last few years, and was fun as a fan to meet you both more recently. The show is extremely high signal, and I am one of many, many freaks who truly appreciate it. Thank you, FYI, to you both who are so in it. Reading a Lightning paywall bent was the first time I did a Lightning transaction. Shout out to you. Thank you for the sats. Just a heads up, nudges like that work and broaden the horizons of those of us who are a little less involved on a daily basis. Quick question. You recently tweeted to consider having a separate laptop with just Bitcoin Core and Sparrow on it. However, on the Sparrow site, it says connecting to your own Electrum server is better. I am working to improve my setup with a dedicated device for transacting and would appreciate any type of quick clarification on this and realize that I may just be confused. So sorry if that is the case. Thanks to you both. Keep doing Satoshi's work. Thank you for the shout out, for the kind words. Thank you for the sats and engaging with the Lightning Network paywall. There will be more news on that next week. Exciting news coming.
I appreciate you, Freak.
Back to the Sparrow thing. Sparrow may recommend running Electrum, but you should probably do it on your own dedicated device too. Set up an Electrum server.
No. So me and Craig disagree on this. So friction kills, right? Ease of use is important, right? We need to make using Bitcoin sovereignly as easy as possible. Now, so you want to use your own node, because if you don't use your own node, you're trusting someone else's node with the privacy of your transactions. And you're also trusting them with actually verifying the rules of the network, right? Actually making sure that the rules are being followed. So you want to use your own node. You have 2 ways to use your own node. You can run Bitcoin Core on your own computer, the same computer you're running Sparrow Wallet on. It's as simple as installing Bitcoin Core on that computer, installing Sparrow Wallet, linking the 2 together in Sparrow interface. Boom, good to go. Or you can run a separate dedicated computer that's running Electrum server and then connect and Bitcoin D. It's running both Bitcoin Core essentially and Electrum server on that separate computer. And then you're linking the computer that you have Sparrow on to that computer. Now, Craig likes that better, and maybe empirically that is better. And why is that better? That's better because your transaction data is held at rest, is encrypted on the computer that Sparrow's on. When Sparrow is closed, that transaction data, your private information, it's a privacy risk. That information is secured and encrypted. If you use Bitcoin Core on your same computer, Bitcoin Core by default, the way Bitcoin Core works, has all of your transaction information. Every Bitcoin transaction you ever made is sitting there on your computer unencrypted. So Craig doesn't like if you run Bitcoin Core on the same computer as Sparrow, because if a hacker gets into your computer, if someone gets access to your computer, they can see all of your past transactions, your past Bitcoin transactions and balances. Now, That's a privacy risk. Obviously, I think privacy is very important, but I don't know if that's that big of a trade-off. And I think on his website, he makes it seem more scary than it is. It's not. Its funds aren't at risk. Normally, in normal situations, if your computer's not compromised, your privacy is not at risk. It's purely in a situation if someone compromises your computer that's running Sparrow and Bitcoin Core, they can see what your transaction history is, and that's not the case if you use Electrum on a separate computer, because that Electrum node, that's your Electrum server that's running, isn't keeping a record of your transactions. Essentially, every time you open Sparrow, you're pinging Electrum, it's checking its index, and then it's pulling balances for you. So that's the nuance between using Electrum server and Bitcoin Core. And I think it's just so much simpler to say, install Sparrow, install Bitcoin Core on the same dedicated computer, be done with it. If you get hacked, they're not going to be able to steal your funds if you're using cold storage and like your keys are not on the fucking computer. But they can compromise your privacy, and that's a reasonable trade-off to me.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. Yes, it does. I mean, spinning up an Electrum server isn't trivial either. I mean, Electris makes it the easiest out of all of them, but still, it's...
Yeah, it's still a separate computer that's got to run Bitcoin D and Electrum, and you have to connect to it. And right now, Tor sucks, so you're not connecting it through a Tor. So you're running like Tailscale or some kind of like local VPN to connect to it. It adds a lot of friction. It makes it more complicated. And I just don't think... Yeah. I mean, yeah. But that's the trade-off. The trade-off is that Bitcoin Core is essentially... And people have noticed this. Like if you have used Spectre with Bitcoin Core, this is how it defaults to. If you use Sparrow with Bitcoin Core, if you open up Bitcoin Core separately with Sparrow closed or Spectre's closed, and you'll see your full transaction list and balance history without putting in a password or anything. That's his concern. His concern is that it's visible there if someone accesses your computer.
Yeah. I think he's nitpicking there. I would keep it simple, stupid. I would prefer full node Sparrow dedicated device. I think that's good enough. Secure that device, secure your network.
If you want to upgrade in the future, upgrade in the future. But my point is like you're in a pretty great setup in that situation.
Yeah. Moving on to top 4 boostagrams from Rabbit Hole Recap, number 237, an evening rip to end a quiet week. At Nat Gas Immersion, another boobs boost, 80,085 sats. Put that turd down. Turds are for toilets. It's true. I had to tell my son this. Update on the potty training. It's getting much better. We don't even have to ask him if he has to go potty. He's going. He's sitting on himself. He's taking dumps in the toilet. And
we're gonna win.
Last night was the first night he made it through the night without going to the bathroom. Dry diaper.
First night ever?
Dry pull-up, yeah.
Congrats.
It's we're making progress. We're getting there. No turd in hands this week. We progress quickly. These children have minds that are sponges. They learn very quickly. It's incredible to see. At Pablo F7Z, Odell, you wanted an IFTTT for Bitcoin transactions? I've got you, brother. Massive domain flexing coming. psbt.io.
It's so good.
Or via Tor service. Hands up.
It's a cool service. I saw it on, he posted on Nostra. It's a really cool service, psbt.io. He explained it really well. If this, then that for Bitcoin transactions. So we were talking about like scheduling Bitcoin transactions and stuff, and it just uses the standardized PSBT format. You don't have to trust them with funds because it's a signed transaction already.
It's just broadcasting.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yep.
psbt.io. At Eric99, 50,000 sats. Stay humble, stack sats. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Great advice.
At Mirbu, Hodl, Palindrome, 2s across the board, 22,222 sats. Mandibles, book just arrived. Time to get involved. Appreciate you both. Appreciate you too, Mirbu.
Mandibles.
Or Mirbu. And then Bon responded to that boost with, it's great. It's great. It's great. Those are the top 4 boostagrams of the week. Before we read the shout outs, if you want to shout out, you can go to tftc.io/contribute. If you want to boostagram us, you can do so by participating in the value for value podcasting too. Well, shoutouts are value for value model as well. It's all value for value model.
Yep.
If you want to do boostagrams specifically, you can do that over podcasting 2.0 compatible apps. We're reading those boosts from Fountain. You can use Breeze, Podverse, Echo, Albi. The plethora of podcasting 2.0 enable apps is growing. I don't even know if that made sense, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. If you don't want to...
Yep. Fountain Podcast, Breeze Wallet. Did you ever do the show? Fountain Podcast,
Yes.
Breeze
Yeah,
Wallet.
got it all
Echo
out there. I already said... Yeah. The fuck were you just doing?
Your sets are appreciated.
What were you doing? What were you doing?
Friend of the pod and good friend of ours just arrived in the jungle, so he texted me.
Oh, nice. I think I know who it is. What was I gonna say? If you're a freak out there who's maybe not able to return value in a monetary form via sats, via shoutouts, or boostagrams, or streaming sats, a great way to support the show is simply give us a review on any,
or share with your friends and family.
That as well.
Both of those help us tremendously.
Spread the word, rate, review on the podcasting platforms. It helps get the show exposure, and it's a great way to give back value if you're not able to do it in a monetary fashion.
And you want to talk about broken incentives, click that auto download button on all three shows, on TFTC, RHR, and Still Dispatch. Even if you don't listen, it helps with the algo bullshit.
Yes.
If it downloads automatically.
It's a part of the game. It's part of the game, freaks.
We're competing with people that say this every fucking episode, so every once in a while we'll remind you.
Yeah, meanwhile, if we're going to do it, like if you're listening on YouTube right now, smash the like button, subscribe.
Yeah.
Hit the notifications. Hit the notifications so you don't miss an episode.
Hit that alert bell. Where is it? It's like over here somewhere. No, it's in this direction. It's over here somewhere. Click the alert bell.
Should be like down, like right below my face. I think so.